All right, all right, all right. Let's make sure I'm not muted this time. What's going on, everybody? My name is Ian Robinson. I'm the lead ZBrush trainer here at Maxon, and I'd like to try to make learning ZBrush as fun as possible. So we're here to do another live stream. If you haven't heard of ZBrush, well, that's okay. That's what I'm here for. So if you have any questions, please make sure to come through and ask some questions. And also just a fun little announcement. We're going to be at Lightbox this weekend, so if you're in the LA area, or Pasadena area rather, and you're going to the Pasadena Convention Center, we're going to be at Lightbox, so definitely come and check us out. What's going on, Andrew? Oh, thanks, man. Appreciate that. Been doing a lot of fun work with this piece, so it's been really good. Let's get some music going, because I like to work with music. That's how my creative juices flow. But let's make sure it's not too loud for everyone else. Yo, Jacob from the Discord. Hey, what's up, Jacob? Hey, man, how you doing? Irene, how you doing? Welcome, welcome. Also, too, I usually have Google Translate open just to make sure that I catch everyone's comments. So, 1 second, make sure. Have a great evening, comrades. Absolutely, you too. Thank you, thank you. All right, so today I thought, well, last week, I wanted to make some more weapons for the other turtles that I'm going to be making. So I want to do that. But if you guys have any questions too, always feel free to jump in. Let's get the ZBrush glove on and let's get going. I've actually been working on this model for on and off now for a little bit. This has been a long-term personal project. I've always wanted to make a Ninja Turtle, and now I have. And I do want to eventually get to posing, but I thought let's make some other weapons first, and then from there we can go through and so forth. But let me also to just touch quickly on where I'm at with this character, and a little cheat for those who want to like do animation ready characters, but you also want to have a little bit of pose in your life. So check this out. So right here, I actually have this bandana. So in the previous stream, I had them kind of going off to screen left, his right. But then I was like, I need to actually make this so that I can, at any point in time, you know, snap it back to be rigged at some point. Because now that's kind of the goal of this. I'm still going to 3D print, but right here I actually have bend curve activated. And what's cool about this is that if any point in time I'm fiddling with it or whatnot, I don't accept this. I just leave this be, because if I need to then take this exact model, let's say this band is 100% approved, they love the band, they want to rig it. Now all I need to do is just come here and hit reset, and now I have the straight band that I wanted. And what's neat about this is that all I have to do is Control Z to get the look back that I originally had. So in your freedom to help control and kind of move around, you want to be able to always have some sort of non-destructive method. And until you apply any one of these deformers that you use, until I hit accept, it's always able to be edited as long as we don't move the gizmo point. If I move the gizmo point, notice the little cog wheel went away. But if I can Control Z, I can get that back, and now my cog wheel is now orange again. So just a little quick tip on how to keep things a little non-destructive when you're using deformers like bend curve. So, and the switch back and forth is really simple. Just hit the W key a bunch, and it's going to switch between the actual deformer itself and also the gizmo. So just in case anybody was curious. Now that being said, let's make another weapon. So I think I'm going to be making a nunchuck today. So I'm going to stamp this. We didn't get very far last week, so I'm just going to start over, which is fine. For rigging, is it best to have it straight out for characters like that? So you want a really neutral position as much as possible in order for the bones to be established easily. So I typically set it up that way, but best advice is always check with the animation team. But just think about if you're going to rig it, if it's posed, it's going to be really difficult. So for something like this, I would recommend, yes, I would recommend it's best to have it so that it's out in a way that you could do stuff. You know, they may want you actually to have it a little bit more, you know, straight back. Just always check with the animation team. But at the end of the day, having a nice straight sash like this would make it easier to rig. Absolutely. Oh, thanks, man. Appreciate it. Okay, cool. So let's go ahead and get into some weapon creation here. So I want to actually, I'm just going to, am I going to solo that? No, I'm not going to solo that. I'm actually going to just throw him off on the screen, and I'm going to go ahead and switch. And let's actually get a new cylinder up here. And I'm going to go ahead and hit T for edit. And then I'm going to come down to initialize. And what I want to do is 32 quadrants is a little too much. So I'm going to start with maybe something like 12. That might be a little bit better for what I'm going for. Just a little bit more low res. Let's actually see what 8 looks like. Nah, maybe 10. Yeah, maybe. 10 might actually be better. I'm looking for a certain shape of it. Nunchucks can be round, but they also, some of them, depending on who's manufactured it, can also have some faceting to it. So maybe let's go 12. I'm going to be indecisive today, and we're going to pick 12. And I'm also just going to go ahead and shut off the V divide or set it to 3, which means it's only going to give me the edge loops that support this shape, nothing more, nothing less. I'm going to go ahead and say make polymesh 3D, and now I have this guy here. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and stretch this out to kind of give me the base shape of what I'm going to need. I can adjust all the other sizes later. I don't need a whole lot. And, oh, thank you so much. Yeah, I try to explain it as best as possible. Good advice on rigging for the bands for sure. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, cool. So, okay, I'm going to want this. Now, I am going to want some cleaner topology real quick. So I'm going to give you guys another old school tip. This one's going to be fun. So in the last stream, we talked about n-gons and how they can be kind of problematic, especially when you're doing, like, let's say, something like this, where you're trying to divide, turn on dynamic subdivision, and now I'm getting this kind of collapsation at this point, and it looks really gross, and I just don't like it. So I want to be able to actually give me some more love on this area here. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to introduce Mesh Fusion. And so with Mesh Fusion, it works off of polygroups, which is the big one. And so I'm going to go ahead and say group by normals, which is found under tools, polygroups, and group by normals. And now what I'm going to do, usually you can create like your own mesh on this by, you know, ZBrushing a certain way, which I've shown 100 times. But with this one, what's really cool is I'm going to load a brush courtesy of Henry Cervanka, who has a actual retopo brush for this specifically. So this will actually be really cool. And you can actually find this at his ArtStation. In fact, let me actually link that brush to you as well, because you guys are going to love this one here. So I'm going to come here, go to Henry. Let me just quickly load up the store in which you can get it from, because this is really cool. So shout out to you, Henry. Thank you for this awesome brush. There we go. We'll just close that down. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is go to geometry, and I'm going to turn off smooth. This is important. The smooth function has to be turned off for this. Now remember I said that we were going to do about 12 segments here. So what's cool is with this brush loaded, it has everything up to 100. So I can literally just come here and say, you know what, grab that. Was it 12 I said? We'll find out. We'll find out here in a second. Nope. Maybe it was 10. I almost forgot. I forgot what we said now. I could also just count it. That would be fun. Okay, I said, okay, hold on. Let's do this again. Yeah, 16 was, what did I say? What did I say on that side? Let's just count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh my gosh, which one did I pick? And just like that, Ian blanks out on what he did today. Did I say 14? I guess I could come over here. Just come back here. What did I say earlier? Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Okay, so while you watch me fumble for a little bit, let's actually do this real quick. So let me just show what the feature actually does. I think I might have said 14 on accident. Let's find out. You can actually tell because things will line up right. Wow. Okay. Well, let me just show this feature before I distract myself with too much. So you drag this out, which is the whole idea here. Come here, drag it out. Ah, it is 12. There we go. It's 12. I just needed to angle that. Very good. So it's 12, and now you'll mask this section out. I'm going to control drag, and I'm going to control drag again, and it rebuilds this mesh for me just like this, which is super awesome. Now, I could, of course, come in here and drag this out. Now, I'm holding shift, right? So I can actually angle this in any way that I would like to make this as straight as possible. Give me come here, control drag, and that repeats that process. And that is a lot of fun. And I can come through here and do this again. This will actually get rid of those n-gons and now create a much cleaner mesh for me. Now I can modify this as best as I can by coming in here and actually doing, you know, like a delete edge loop. So I don't need this edge loop here. So I could just delete that edge loop on top, keeping my mesh super nice and clean. and then I'm good to go. My mesh is actually a lot better and a lot more uniform. So again, I picked my segments 12, I then dragged out that shape, and then from there, it actually was able to then do that control drag. So if I wanted to do that again, I could do this here, drag this out, and it'll rebuild that. The reason why I wanted the segments and I was triple, quadruply teching myself was the fact is that I wanted to avoid this kind of weirdness that happens with, like, this isn't what I would call clean mesh. This is a lot cleaner. So this is just something more I can work with, which is more usable for me. So there you go. Hopefully that answered. 4 times 3. Yeah, exactly. I can't do math today, but thank you. We come here for art. Oh, I apologize. Bear with me. Okay, so now let's actually, I want to actually create like a cap on this guy. So I'm going to want to have caps. I'm going to want to have wraps coming around, very similar to what I did to his arms. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to save this too. I'm going to come out here and save this. And I'm just going to put this on my desktop somewhere, and I'm going to call this my nunchucks perfect 001, just in case I want to save a different iteration. And that's going to be good. So this is going to be the main one. Now notice too, if you're new to ZBrush, the very first subtool gets the naming convention of how you save the ZTL. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to Control-Shift-D and duplicate this as my base mesh. So this is going to be something I'm going to call back on at some point in time if I need to. And this one, I'm going to call this, I'm just going to call this the none of chucks. You can call it whatever you would like, but that's what I'm going to call it today. And now I'm going to use ZModeler once again. And what I would like to do now is I'm going to focus on these 2 parts right here. So I'm going to come in here. Let's actually come in here. Let's grab an edge. Let's go polygroup. And I'm going to pick a new polygroup on just this edge. And then I'm going to repeat that here so that it actually has this cap segment. And then I'm going to go ahead, come over here to Q Mesh, and we're going to drag this out. And then I'm going to press and hold Control, which will give me a new piece altogether. And then from there, I can actually isolate this, and I can come down, invert that mask, and then split hidden. And now I have my top cap. And I'm choosing to name as best I can. Does anyone know how to create dimensionally accurate bezel or rounded corners? For example, if you want exactly 3 millimeters curved edge on those nunchucks. So accurately as in a procedural method of typing in a number? No, not really. Everything, this is more of a visual program, so you're kind of more visualizing that. However, you can check your measurements by, like, if I come over here and I bevel this out and then I have a scene scale. In this case, units is always set to millimeters by default because the scene size is 2. So I can check this, which I'm sure you're probably aware of. But if I turn on the transpose, and come over here and come point to point here, then I can come in and actually say that that's 0.1 unit. Once I get the scale master, I can then refine this, but it's not as simple as just typing in a number, at least to the best of my knowledge. But that's a great question. There we go. We don't need that thing on. Okay, so now I do want to create. Actually, let's actually back this up just for a second. There we go. Okay, and I want to set this back over here. Beautiful. So I don't want to create a bevel just yet. However, there is something else too I want to call out. Talking about bevels here, we'll do this here in a second because there is something that we could utilize which is called Bevel Pro. So let's do that too. So I want to actually come through here and actually make this thicker. So I'm going to push this in. And the reason why I'm going to be pushing this in and not pulling this out is I actually do want to see how deep this goes. And it's really easy to push it in and check that flip normal. But what we could do to correct this is just come down to the bottom of the tool menu called Display Properties and just flip it. And that should ultimately, there we go. I just had a mask. So that should ultimately come through and that will flip your normals anytime. So now that's facing the correct direction. Now, if I want to create a more accurate bevel across everything, I can actually use polygroups for this. So what I can do is, first and foremost, what I want to do is actually come over here to polygroups and group by normals. And I do want to give it some topology, because right now the topology is very low res, which is not something that I want. And yes, I could just come through here and do this one, and then I could come in and just tap this edge, and that will give me the repeated bevel easily. But kind of going a little bit more into what you were asking earlier, Imperial, what we could do is, now that we have some polygroups, let's actually come through here. Let's give us some topology. I'm going to solo this out, tap repeat on this edge in here to get the same amount of topology. Come in and do this section. So I'm just giving me a little bit of TLC. Okay. Now, what we can do from here is actually come up to Z plugin, and we can do Bevel Pro. Now, real quick, just going to save this real fast. I always say before I initiate a major plugin, I just think that's a better approach. So here we go. We're now into Bevel Pro. And what you could see here, this operates, if you've never seen this window before, this window operates very much like ZBrush. So I could just come here, alt-click. I like to use my mouse at this point. I just find it easier. So now what we can do is take a look here. We have a few options. So we have a bevel amount. We have the bevel smoothness, the polygroup angle in which it's recognizing. So anytime there's a polygroup change, what's the angle in which it's detecting that? I could literally throw this down to 0. And then if I had any type of polygroups that are on flat surfaces, it would start to ignore that. Or I could kick this up all the way, and then it would engage every angle. So, and then I can keep it sharp. I can also change this from a chamfer or a bevel. So if I want to quickly right now, you're just seeing pink here. And the pink in this is actually telling me what that cut looks like. And it's giving me some information. First information is this blue line, which is kind of it calling out my center point here. And then I have a red line. I have 2 red dots, sorry, not lines, dots. And these dots might be hard to see because it also disappears when I zoom in. But this is also talking about and recognizing the normals that are there. So this is the cut that's happening. And we can view this actually by turning on auto apply. And now I can see what this is actually doing. And now I can make some of these modifications. So again, I can come through here and say, you know, my bevel amount, I want my bevel amount to be massive. So here I can keep this consistent. I could say I want this to be 0.35, and this will give me this. And you can see here it's now beveling every aspect. And then let's actually come through here on this bevel amount, and I can also change the resolution or the mesh offset. So this is another way in which I can come through here and get this bevel more consistent across the board. So maybe I want a small bevel. I can also polish by groups if I would like to, but that could be kind of fun. So, and when in doubt, if you do break it, then all you have to do is hit cancel. But here are the different features of what you can do. So I actually want to reset everything because I did break it, so there is a reset button. And this is something I can do. Now what's cool about this is if I do auto apply on, then it's going to go ahead and detect that we're going to make this official cut. However, if I would like to, let's actually come back down here, say something like this, give me a little bit more of a resolution. Okay, if I leave auto apply off and I say okay, then what's going to happen is live Boolean will engage and you'll see your cuts. But what you'll also get is this cap right here. That is actually the cap that is making those cuts. And you can see here I have different caps. So these caps are actually engaged in making those cuts, and they're set to that motion. If it's set to positive like this one was, then this is actually adding. And if this is a negative, it's actually subtracting. So those are ways that you can go ahead and utilize those. That's for more complicated shapes too, though. Again, just kind of like an idea for you to go about it. For me, I'm just going to use the bevel and I'm going to kind of eye it. But that might give you a little bit closer to what you were looking for. Matt! What's up, Matt? Hi, good evening. Can you please redo the step where you flip normals? I don't understand how that flat surface became 2 surfaces. Absolutely not a problem. Let's actually do that. and I'm going to go back in time for this. So we're just going to use the history brush, going to Control Z. Okay. So we started out with this extraction of this piece, which is a single-sided geometry. And so what I did was I used the modeler, I hovered over a face, and I pressed and held the space bar. This engages the modeler, which is a brush within ZBrush, so B, Z, and M. And then from here, I chose the action Q mesh, which is basically ZBrush's extrude, but on steroids. It's like, it does way more than just extrude out. It also detects edge loops, and it also tries to make your mesh watertight when possible. So it's a really good tool. So I use Q mesh over extrude 99 out of 100. There are cases where I'll use extrude, and I can always explain that later. And then I use polygroup all because everything is the same polygroup, and I wanted to give this thickness. Now what I did was, instead of pulling out, so notice I faced on here and I'm pulling out on this mesh. Instead of doing that, I actually pushed inwards, and I used the underlining subtool to come in and tell me how far down I'm going. I wanted to make sure that I at least either intersected or got close enough to it so there's not like a huge gap. Okay, so now my normals are inverted. My normals are flipped. I do have two sides. I can see this internal structure, and I can also see this structure here. However, when I try to manipulate this normal will be busted, and even at render time, it might appear that it's correct, but it is actually flipped in, which could cause issues in future stuff like UV cutting or any type of production work. So a flip normal is not necessarily ideal. So I went down on the tool menu all the way to the bottom to display properties, and there is a button right here called flip or double. And what's cool about this is that if I hit flip, then it's going to take those normals and flip them, so now they are correct. Double is actually going to showcase both sides as if it's always correct. And where that's super ideal is if I do a temporary pull out right here, change this, and I have a single-sided geometry, when I turn it around, I can't see that single mesh. I only see this one mesh. So where double comes in is now when I turn double on, I can see both sides and manipulate both sides. However, a common mistake is that you see both sides, you forget which way it's facing, you start extruding this out, and then when you're like, oh, I have double turned on, when I turn double off, I get this weird inverse effect. So it's just important to know you can come down and flip that normal. And in this case, now I have a normal facing normal and a flipped normal on the same subtool. So I can actually just either mask off, should be able to mask off. Yep, should be able to just mask off and flip. Nope. Let me reiterate that. Let me not mask off. Let me actually just select that, flip that one, and now everything is correct. I thought masking would work, but it did not. So that is the way around it. So that's how you can use a flipped normal to your advantage if you want to make sure something is as deep as you need it to be. It helps you see through the mesh, but you want to flip it back. Perfect. You're absolutely correct. Yeah. Never done it, but maybe macro with a 3mm Phillip bevel or chancel measured before. Yeah, you would want to make sure that your scene scale is set accordingly, because a lot of the sliders are kind of they're not one-to-one. That's the easiest way to put it. There's a multiplication happening, so yeah, macro coding might be the best way to go about it. That's a good point. Absolutely, yeah, ZModeler is very powerful and convenient. Okay, so let's put this back because I don't need that, and now I have this shape here. Very cool. Okay, before we get into too much detailing, let's actually go ahead and start making the chain itself. And the chain's going to be super fun because actually I find the chain to be relatively a simple approach, and the way I would like to do it is I'm going to use the ring 3D, but I actually want to see something. So I'm going to save this real quick. I'm going to push this off over here because I'm going to switch out. And the reason why I shoved that nunchuck off to the side is because I didn't want to do a stamp. I want to keep Leo here as much as possible. So I didn't want to do a stamp on that, but I do want to drag in a 3D. I want to drag in the 3D ring. And I want to see about modifying this to be a little bit easier. So again, I'm going to initialize, going to come through here, kick this divide down a little bit. Maybe say something like that. As well as I don't need 64, so maybe, what's 16 look like? 16 might be a pretty good number. What does 12 look like? 12 actually might be a lot better for this, so that'll be good. Okay, perfect. So that looks good. That's what I want. So now I'm going to come through here. We're going to rotate this around. And now I'm going to, with this ring, come up here to the gizmo. And we're going to get that gizmo cog. And we're going to say extender. And now we're going to go ahead and let's see here. I don't want any creasing. So let's kick this out. And let's do something like this. There we go. And then now here, resolution. We can say resolution of maybe 4. That should be fine. This will give me a little something that I'm looking for. And then, yeah, I like that. That'll be good. Let's accept that. Now let's come back to our nunchuck here. Let's come in here to subtool. We're going to insert. And now we're going to insert that new ring that we got. And now that's this guy. All right. So now we're going to come in here. And we're just going to go ahead really quickly. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to control drag this out. I'm going to go ahead and hold control. I'm sorry, shift and rotate that. So I have something like this. Now I want to do a few. Now I could do this. Boop. And that could be fun. That could be really, really simple. If I want an even calling on this, I want consistency throughout everything. Then what I can do is set this to the center. I'm going to go here, polygroups to auto groups. And then I am going to come down to array mesh. I'm going to turn on array mesh. I'm going to make sure that we hold the transpose and we lock the position. And now I actually want to offset this, and I'm going to want to offset this in the not Z. There we go. I'm going to want to offset this in that Y area. So it'll be something like this. And I want to get this set up to say something like, so maybe 1.6. Maybe 1.6. Yeah, that's pretty close. Maybe, actually, 1.55. 1.57. Perfect. There we go. And this can give me a repeated factor. Now, if I want to repeat this, if I change that number, if I say I want to repeat that 3 times, now this value changes, right? So now I got to just kind of come through here and say this is probably 2.5. This will give me just a repeated value, maybe a little bit less than that. So 2.4. There we go. So this will be a way to kind of showcase what that chain will look like without absolutely having it. And now I want to be able to move this around, right? But if I end up moving too much, oh no, this works out great. Perfect. Never mind. I was going to say, what I could do is if I needed to, I can always unlock that position and move it. But because we're just moving on the Y axis, that actually isn't really necessary. So, but if I wanted to rotate things around, I can change it. I can rotate. I can push this in, and I can maybe do something like that. There we go. So great question. Will Z-Model ever support n-gons? Well, the problem with n-gons is that they're not really, can't really subdivide them. And that's kind of the issue overall. Subdividing an n-gon just doesn't work well for anyone, at least not in my experience. So it's hard to support something when we have something as powerful as our subdivision. So that's where Mesh Fusion that I showed earlier comes into play, because Mesh Fusion will help you correct those n-gons very fast. And it's actually been a mission statement of mine to help spread the love of Mesh Fusion, because that's been in ZBrush now. Well, I knew about it 4 years ago, but I think it's been like 8 years, maybe longer that's been around. So it's definitely one of those aspects where it's like, you know, it's a really good, powerful tool. So instead of like trying to support something that doesn't play well, Not that we won't, who knows? I'm sure maybe that's something to talk about. But yeah, as far as I'm aware of, there's a lot of just, it's a lot more complicated than just a simple support. So that's how I understand it. But that's, I don't know. It's always something to ask though. So hopefully that answer was helpful because I kind of rambled there for a second. Okay, let me see something real quick. I want to say maybe 2.35 and now space things a little bit. 2.3. There we go. I did an inflate while I was chatting. And actually I'm going to want at least one more of these. So I'm going to say 4 repeat. And now I'm going to reestablish this number. So this is more like 3. Maybe 3.1. There we go. So now this gives me a more controlled, even spacing. And then again, I'm going to just kind of bring this up and kind of set this around. So you can make it as long or as short as you want. What's really cool about nunchucks is that I've seen a lot of people in real life use them in different variances. Some with long chain, some with short. It really is all what you know, it's your world, your design. As long as it twirls, you should be good. Okay, great. So now I have this. Let's actually come through. Let's make a lower cap. And with this, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and showcase another way. I'm just going to Control-Shift-D duplicate. And I'm just going to go ahead and grab this. Also, hey, Chris, how you doing? I see your comment. Doing great. How are you? There we go. So now I have this guy right here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a simple delete hidden. So let's go here to modify topology, delete hidden. I'm going to hide this one and just do a Control W just so that I have different poly groups because I don't want a hole in this one. And same exact thing. What I'm going to do, actually, since this one is very much similar to this depth, I believe, let me see if I'm correct, but I believe I did a Q mesh. And what's cool about Z Modeler is if I want to do this exact same Q mesh, just tap one time, and yeah, that actually it repeats the last action. But it went in a direction in which I did not want. So I'm actually going to just kind of do that instead. There we go. So now I have these 2 caps on here. And what I'm going to do now is come over here. And I just guessed. I'm just guessing arbitrarily at this point. I feel like it's close enough for what I want. So now I'm going to come in here. I'm going to add a little bit. If I need this to be a little bit bigger, I can always pull this out and hold Shift, and that will also kind of repeat that action. Or I can just start Q meshing, do that, and I can delete this one. We don't need that. There we go. Okay, great. So that should be pretty close. A little cheat for checking if your work, like if you want this to be the exact same size. What's cool, actually, eyeballing that original one is pretty cool. There's this, it might be hard to see, but there's this white line all the way across. Sometimes what I'll do, and I'm not even kidding, is I'm going to come up here, and I'm going to use this white line as a measuring tool to see if this one is about as solid as this one. Now, I could have just duplicated this one and then done some like close holes and stuff, but I didn't want to, so I didn't. So in this case, I'm actually choosing to just come over here and I did the action and it was actually pretty close. So I'm happy about that. But that's a little fun thing you could do as well. Giving you all the weird tips and tricks today. There we go. I'm gonna come in here, add this one, and I'm gonna come in here, add this one, and then what happened here? Oh, I must have touched a thing. Let me come in, delete this. I must have touched the thing. That's fine. That's close enough. Okay, great. Now I can come down here to this bottom one real quick. And let's actually, okay. Let's come in here, let's go like that. Let's add another one like that. Perfect. That one has a more closed hole. Hey, good morning, Rafi. How you doing? Always glad to see you. Oh, you're doing good, Chris. Awesome, awesome. Hexazer, yep. See, yeah, turtles. How does this topology divide? I guess you made that middle part with a circle like that, so that has the cap. Yes, on purpose. Absolutely, I did. So that's where the mesh fusion comes in, and I'll give you a really good example. So I'm going to solo this one out. Now, without using any modifiers, I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to just do a simple divide. So I'm going to divide. I'm going to default divide, meaning I'm going to keep smooth on. I'm going to just divide this up. So now this is what this looks like divided up. This is how the wireframe itself is going to stretch. Now, I'm going to stamp this. Boop. And now we're going to take a look at one that isn't as clean. So I'm going to insert a normal cylinder, and this one only has, you know, a basic vertice, and everything extends out from here. So without any edge loop support, if I go to divide this, you start seeing how it starts kind of pulling, and this now edge loop that was created is now kind of warbling, and it's becoming weird. If we look at the mesh a little bit more closely to what this mesh actually looks like, if I were to come in and just hit delete lower, you can see here that this mesh is being pulled and it's being, you know, torn in a way that is actually leaving an imperfection. So let me get better material for this. So this is kind of that imperfection look, where if I were to come in here and go back to this cap, if I turn off, you can see how smooth this top surface is. And if I keep subdividing, it gets smoother and smoother to the point where now it's just a really nice, clean mesh when it gets subdivided. Here on this guy right here, when I keep doing that, eventually it's going to get to a point where it can't do anymore, but you see all of these kind of warbles. It's very so faint, but everything is being pulled by this one vertice here in the middle. It's just not super clean. So when I want something that's going to have nice topology, edge loops that support and work off, that are truly quad, or it's all quad base, just gives a nicer result, where this mesh originally started from triangles. And, you know, depending on what the result you're going for, I just want a super clean surface that eventually too is going to be easier for sculpting, because at the end of the day, this vertice here in the middle, even if I were to divide up, and I were to come in here and start sculpting, you know, I could get some decent, you know, I could subdivide this up. This is at 500,000, and you're seeing all this tearing as I'm sculpting. So it's not super ideal for sculpting on it, right? But if I were to come back to this cap, and this cap here is actually only 200,000 after I've subdivided a bunch of times, and you can see here, I'm just getting a much better, cleaner results. So it's a lot easier to work with this mesh than it is to work with this mesh, and this is twice the topology in theory, but in reality, it's just giving me so many issues. So that's really what I mean. Hopefully that clarified that. It's really a preference on what I want. I always try to keep everything super clean, especially if I'm going to ultimately end up doing anything for animation. Like I want to push this guy through Character Creator, so I want to be able to really set that up, and I just want everything that gets rigged to have nice, clean topology. So, great question, by the way. Hopefully that answered that. I'm going to come in here and restamp Leo so he hangs out with us for the majority of the stream. He's done, by the way. Like, I'm really satisfied with him. Aside from, like, you know, any type of tertiary details, he's pretty much cooked and ready to go. So now it's all about, like, creating this chain ultimately. So now from here, let's see. Let me check that real quick. Let's see, are you doing all the weapons because you will do the turtles? Yes, absolutely. Is there advantage using ZModel over other 3D software like Blender, for example? It's a great question. So ZModeler, in my opinion, is probably the easiest for me as an artist to use and do hard surface work. It acts differently than some other CAD or DCC applications that you're familiar with, like Blender, for example, or even Cinema 4D, which works a little bit differently. For me, it's such a powerful hard surface tool in ZBrush that keeps me creating, and it doesn't really have me skip out of another program. For me, jumping out of a program to do another task ultimately makes me feel like I'm leaving a room to do a task to come back into the room to continue. It's one of those mindsets of like, I don't want to leave my room to go do a thing and then just to come back into it. So I try to speed up my pipeline process. I try to ultimately just come in here and stay in one package as long as possible to give me the best results possible. So, so to answer your question, ZModeler is ZBrush's answer to hard surface, and it's amazing. In fact, what I would actually implore everyone here to watch is we just had the ZBrush Summit. I'm going to drop a link real fast. We had a couple hard surface artists come in and showcase how powerful ZModeler is for them as well. So you can get a sense of that. In fact, I will give you Henry's, because Henry was amazing. And he showcased a lot of the stuff that I'm even talking about today. So, sure, Van Gogh. Let's see if we have it. Should be day 3. There it is. In fact, I'm going to drop a link on when he starts up. It's a really good watch, absolutely. So here, let me do a share at the exact start spot for everyone and come in here and boom. Do I plan on doing any vids on CC4 workflow when you move the turtle over? I love the Pav videos done recently. Seems like a good marriage with ZBrush. Absolutely, yeah. I do plan on doing more work with that as well. I haven't had the time to go in as deep as Pavlovich has, but absolutely, especially since their plugin for, you know, posing just within ZBrush is super beneficial. So I do, yeah, plan on going through some of that stuff when I can get a moment. Okay, let's actually do something real quick. So I'm actually going to go back in time before I subdivided, because what I want to do, there we go. What I want to do is actually do some edge loop support here. So I could do one of two things. I can either do edge loop support, or I can just come through here and do a crease by polygroups, which will be super good. And then just have this natural fall off here, which I think I'm just going to do that. That's a lot easier to go that route. And then same thing here. Let's go back in time until I did the subdivision. Going to then from here, crease polygroups, and then subdivide back up. This gives me a nice sharp edge, which is what I'm looking for these nunchucks in particular. And I'm going to actually make sure that my caps are subdivided at the same subdivision level, because what I'm going to do, and I could have done this beforehand, but I think this is super important, is we can actually merge things that are already together. If they have the same level of resolution roughly, and they're on the same subdivision count, merging them together actually keeps that subdivision count for you. So I'm going to call this my nun caps. Naming is really fun today. And like I said here, so I got geometry resolution. So my subdivision 5 is still there, which is perfect. And now they're merged together, which is awesome. So, and if I want to, just to be a little bit more, if I want to keep those polygroups at any point in time, I'll just group by normal, and that will give me a little bit more of cleaner. This way, when I move into something like substance, this will actually help me come through and keep that, you know, controlled a lot easier. And now here, I actually am going to want to come on and actually do a couple cleanups on the edge real fast. So I'm going to add in just a couple lines here just to give me some edge loop support. Sometimes I'll take this manual approach just to have some decent fall off. And maybe add something like that. Coming down here, add this one in here, and then I'm going to add another one here. And I'm going to add another one here, actually, and then same on the top. Last minute decision. The reason for that is when I divide, again, I'm going to have some interesting fall off, and the bigger the spacing between that, then it's ultimately going to deform differently. So if I come in here now, that's just going to give me a little bit more of a controlled edge. So I'm okay with that subdivision. So then that gives me that base handle. And we're pretty much done for the at least block outside of it. Yeah, Henry rocks, absolutely. 100% it's nice to keep your flow as an artist and stay in one software package as long as possible. Yeah, absolutely. Would be great if we can control plus rotate and extrude face. Currently, we can only control plus move. Oh, I like the way you think. Oh yeah, F for full frame. Yeah. Okay. So now what we're gonna do is I'm gonna come up here real quick. I'm gonna go ahead and kind of get that area smooth, just kind of see what that's like. So I'm doing I'm simply just doing a dynamic subdivive, and then I'm doing control and an inflate to give me a little bit more thickness. Because when it subdivides, it kind of, when it smooths, it kind of rounds a little bit more, giving me a bigger of a gap that I don't want. So now what I'm going to do is let's just go ahead and accept this. I'm going to make this into a mesh. So now this is actual chain. I'm happy with the results of this. And from here, let's actually thinking, because I just dropped my blank on this. Oh yeah, I was going to do poly groups and come through here. Okay, fantastic. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically, I want to now kind of get things, I want to get the other side to this eventually. So let's actually get some wraps done on this. So I was playing around and I have an idea on how I want this to look. I'm thinking about having the wrap spiral all the way down and then having like an extra twine on top of it, giving me just a little bit of like, almost as if there's like a cord wrapped around some fabric. That's kind of the idea that I have here. So in order to do this, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to, let's save, and I'm going to get back out of this. I'm going to come back into a simple brush, and we're going to go with the helix. I'm going to drag this out, hit T for edit, and I got this wireframe, and now we're going to do some initializing on this. First things first, let's go to radius, and let's literally get rid of this radius by grabbing this dot, throwing it out here in the middle of nowhere and letting go. That's going to give me a more uniform look. If you didn't know, you can actually come in and modify this however you would like, so you can get some really cool stuff. So we can actually drop that and get rid of those two. Anytime you make a change in initialize, even if you do Control Z, that change is still there. So you'll actually have to make sure you get rid of that. Now from here, I'm going to go ahead and we're going to drop the, we're actually going to increase the coverage. And I'm trying to eye this close enough to be the right size. Let's see here. Now, as I increase the coverage, notice that my resolution is getting a little more interesting, right? It's getting a little bit lower. So I'm going to have to, modify that as much as possible. This was originally at 8, which is good for repeating. So I might just leave it at 8. But what I want to do now actually is cut the subdivision down to 3. And now you can see here, I'm actually getting like kind of a band that's starting and it's coiling all the way down. And this is actually, yeah, this is a lot what I'm going for. So I'm going to leave this here, and then I'm going to go ahead and say make polymesh 3D. Now I'm going to bring back this the nunchuck itself. Now I stamped it to give me a rough size of how this should work, but so I'm probably going to be doing a duplication at some point. So real fast, let's put this over here. I keep stamping them here. It's for the algorithm. Now I have this guy. Where are we? Yeah, this is the guy. Perfect. So now let's come over here and let's actually insert a single edge loop right down the middle. And then we're going to come here to poly groups and we're going to do group by normals. I'm going to isolate this band right here and we're going to delete the rest. So we don't need the rest. So let's come through here and let's do modify topology and delete hidden. Yeah, Henry's tutorials are super awesome. That's actually why I shared them, because I actually went and got his brushes from him. And so definite shout out to him. He did a lot of work that I didn't want to do, so I use his brushes with some hard surface stuff all the time. Henry's amazing. So yeah, definitely shout out to him. Check his stuff out. All right, so now I got this. Now what I want to do is actually come through here and kind of modify this a little bit. But I'm going to need to do this on my actual nunchuck itself, right? So I'm going to come in here. I'm going to insert my guy right here. There it is. Let's scale this bad boy up. Perfect. And now I'm going to have this come through. And let's see. Say something like this. Now, I'm going to hover over this edge. I think I want to extrude this out. So I'm going to come through here, start extruding, press and hold the Alt. Or sorry, press and tap the Alt just to give me a little bit more coverage. And I'm going to kind of kick it in to say something like that. So I want this to be a lot closer, a little bit thicker of a band. Say that'll be good. And now I'm going to come through here. And actually what I can do is actually grab that Z modeler back, come here, this edge, and let's actually say slide the entire edge loop. No, that's not going to work. Okay, that's fine. I wanted to see if I can push that edge loop all the way through. But nope, I might be able to just do a mask partial, mask that whole section, because it's just slightly flared, and I want to push that in a little bit. Okay, great. What I could also do too is just come through here and actually just re-delete these. That will kind of do a straighten out all on its own. Just move this point just a little bit more like that. Okay, great. Now let's actually come through here and do an interactive elevation. So it kind of pops up a little bit. It gives me something more like this. Kind of more of that like traditional grip you might see. It's kind of flared out a little bit because we're going to add some twine going all the way down the bottom. So now I'm going to come in here. Boop, 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 boop. I'm going to push this in just like such. All right, say something like that. And again, what I can do, I can either do a control drag or I can do an array mesh. And if I do an array mesh, say something like this, let's go 1.75, maybe 1.8. It's getting it relatively close. You know what, actually, let's do this. I'm gonna do a control drag and I'm gonna show you guys why. So I'm going to drag this back down. So let's turn array mesh off. See something like this. I'm actually going to kind of extend this a little bit so this actually works for me. I'm going to drag this so then it has something like that. And I'm going to rotate this around and push this down. Okay, let's solo this out so we can see what's happening here. So I want to keep that spacing as much as possible. And now I want to actually weld this together. So I'm going to come through here. I'm going to bridge these edges. So bridge this edge. Just kind of get this cleaned up. Say something like that. There we go. Maybe scale that down just a little bit, which is fine. This is also going to determine how our caps look. Okay, great. And now what we can do is we could just come in here and give it some thickness. So leaving solo turned off here just so we can see what's going on. I'm going to go ahead, Q mesh. Again, I'm going to drag this out. Actually, before I do that, let me see something real fast. Let me see. I'm actually just kind of modifying and making sure that this doesn't deform. So giving it a little bit of edge loop support there. There we go. That should be good. Okay, great. I always try to check in on the questions. All right. So now let's give it some thickness. So I can do thickness with that Q mesh drag out, or, and actually real fast, let's give it a little edge loop support here. So I always like to give edge loop support where it makes sense, because I don't want this pulling, pulling away too much. So if I control Z and notice this edge is gone, right? When I hit D, it really drops. Here's the normals of that edge, and look how far back it pushed, right? But when I do this and I get that right up there, look how much that actually stays in shape. So I want to make sure that I get that nice control and push that edge loop back so that it's close enough and really doesn't fall off too much. Just a little bit more control for that. And then we can come up here to geometry, dynamic subdiv. We'll turn on dynamic. We'll add some thickness to this. Now the thickness is, well, it's up to you how you want to go about doing that. Say something like this. That might be a little too much, but if you do like the result you're getting, you can actually kick the offset inwards and get something a little bit more of what you would like. I'm actually going to be doing a kind of like have this tuck in a little bit. I'm going to be doing some sculptural stuff. So this will be good enough for me. I'm going to say, let's actually get the move transpose. Oh, it's the wrong one. So it's the move. There we go. So I have extra brushes installed in here, so my shortcuts have changed. Usually it's B, M, and then T for the move topological, but in this case for me, it's going to be J. And the reason why I want the move topological is I want to be able to tuck in and affect just one part at a time. And this will do that for me. So I can actually get this up. I can actually pull this in. I can just affect this. Even though they're all connected, that move topological is really helping me affect just what I want. So in this case, it's this. There we go. Kind of stretching that a little bit. I could also too just come in here, center this, and then make sure that that's pushed up the way that I want. This will give me this kind of nunchuck here. Okay, great. So now I'm not worried about that space too much. Let's do the same thing down here. Hey, Josh, how you doing, buddy? Thanks, man. I'm much appreciated. You can guess what turtle we'll be doing next by the one I started with. All right. So now we have something like this. Now I'm going to control deflate that in just a little bit, just so that I have that tuck. Now here, this is where you can start making these modifications, right? So in this case here, I can do kind of a little bit more of a scale, and that control scale just gives me just a little bit more workaround, which is really helpful. Or what I can do, again, I can drop this all the way down to the beginning. I can actually delete the lower if I wanted to. And then, actually, let's not do that. Let's just keep that scale. Let's just do control scale. That's fine. It's okay. That looks like that. I like it. Perfect. Now let's get some twine in here. Let's actually get the twine looking a little good. What's up? What's up, Jamie? How you doing? Thank you. Thank you. Again, if anybody's new, definitely please feel free to ask questions. Okay. Now, coiling, wrapping this all around. Notice we're using dynamic subdivision for this. What we're going to be doing now is we're actually going to be control duplicating this and shutting off the actual dynamic subdivision. Okay. And then from here, all I'm going to be doing now is I want to actually frame this a little bit more. So I'm going to come in here. We're going to come up to, I want to do, what do I want to do? If I go to stroke here and I do, here, let's do this. Let's actually come in here because I want to do this. I want to have this nice control for this. So we're going to go crease. I'm going to do crease polygroups. I zoomed all the way in. Come through here. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to get the Z modeler and I'm just going to go crease and I'm going to edge loop partial and remove that crease there. Did that remove that crease? Nope. Remove that crease there. Yeah, I just want that one crease on that side there. I could probably just like uncrease everything instead of doing it the hard way and probably just coming in here and tapping that guy. Come here, crease, partial, boop. There you go. I think that did it. Yay, awesome. That was way faster. Just come in there, crease. And then now I want to come over here to stroke, and I actually want to frame mesh by my creased edging. So now this follows that whole wrap all the way down the pipeline. So now I can come in here and just do, you know, let's see, not multi-tube. I just want regular. Yeah, actually, yeah, it's fine. Curve multi-tube is good. Come in here, tap one time, and then come all the way through. Oh, it stopped right there. Why did we stop right there? I didn't ask you to stop right there. I didn't ask you to stop. Let's see here. Let's try that one more time. Maybe just, let's do this. Let's do this. Stroke, maybe just border. Yeah, that seems to be a lot better. I'm gonna get 2 of them though, and 2 is not what I wanted, but that's okay. So I'm gonna come over here and tap and get that wrap all the way around so it looks like that. And that should be okay, so that's fine. And now what I can do is actually come over here to auto groups, grab just what I need. we got some funkiness happening here. Okay, that's okay. We could fix that. Not quite sure why that's doing what it is doing, but let's live a little. Should be good. So let's actually do this. Let's go ahead. Let's troubleshoot this. I'm just going to go ahead and modify topology and delete hidden. I'm going to take the approach I think would be beneficial here. So I'm just going to come in here, grab this one. It's a little bit of an unexpected thingy. That's okay. I'm going to grab up. Did not mean to do that. Grab this edge loop right here. I'm going to grab here, come in, do polygroup. That's fine. We're going to do the same thing down here. All the way down the rabbit hole. And let's actually grab that guy right there. Grab that one right there. Let's do this. Let's come over here. Let's see what auto groups does for us. Boop. Yeah, that actually works. And let's actually do the same thing right here. Let's go boom, boom. Let's do auto groups. Just get rid of that. Hit F. There we go. Okay. A little bit of a workaround, but that's okay. It did what I needed it to do. That's fine. We can just go ahead and delete hidden. And we can even say close holes, because that will be fine, just like that. Now what we can do, we can add this in, and we can blow this up. Have this come through and kind of do that wrap just like such. Now I hit Control-Shift-D. I'm sorry, not Control-Shift-D. I hit D for dynamic subdiv, and it remembered that the thickness was applied on this one. And so in this case, it actually benefited. I inflated it and then hit the dynamic subdiv. That thickened it up for me naturally. So I just Control-Z, the undo, and then redid it. This actually looks good. So I'll say apply to that. And now I have this wrap here. So this is something that we can go about. Hey, Creation Crib, thanks, man. Much appreciated. So now we got this, which is awesome. So now we can just come on in here. I'm actually going to do myself a favor. I'm going to try to get this centered as much as possible. So I'm going to come up here to Transpose Master. So let's go to Z plugin, transpose, nope, wrong one. Transpose Master, T-pose mesh. Boom, perfect. Okay, great. What I'm gonna do, Just maybe send this to the center. I want to turn this on, and I want to put this about in the center. I'm gonna try a thing. I like doing that, so that's fine. And then I'm gonna go ahead and then send this back. So I sent the chain to world center, and ideally the reason for that is so I'm gonna delete my lower subdivisions on this, and then I'm gonna do a mirror and weld on the Y. So that gives me that. And then I can reconstruct those subdivisions. So now everything has those subdivisions. On this guy right here, same thing. And now I'm just gonna go ahead and really pop that up there so you can see what I'm doing. I'm clicking that X, hitting that Y, and then mirror and welding. Alt tapping on this thing. There we go. And then with the chain as well, let's see what that looks like. That didn't do what I wanted it to do. That's okay. We can actually fix that. Of course, it's not going to because it's on the split side. But now this has everything kind of in the middle where I would like it to be. Let's put that there. We can always add a couple extra, so I can do this. Come through, grab this guy here, and we'll just manually duplicate this. Probably could have thought of this a little bit better of an approach, but this will be close enough. Same thing here, Control Shift drag, Control Shift A expands. I mask that off. Control drag, move that down, get that pretty close to what I want. So now this whole nunchuck is world center. And then let's just auto group this so that all the poly groups are different. There we go. So now you can see what that looks like. So there is our nunchuck. And then, of course, too, we can always like combine things, make it as simple as possible. Let's actually come over here. We got the caps. We have, we'll call this the string wrap. I don't know the technical terms for this. And let's call this this will be the leather wrap. Leather wrappy wrap. Control Shift A expands everything that is not welded to each other. Great question, by the way. So right here on this chain, so if I come here and call this my chain, boom. So there's a few different ones. So everything is a different poly group, so everything is not welded together. So if I want to quickly select these two chains here, I can just cover over those, which just selects that. Control Shift A expands just those two right then and there. Control Shift S, if I were to do this the other way, S will shrink the topology. Control Shift X, as in expand with E. So then that would expand that, right? But to quickly just get something like this, Control Shift A, it's way faster. And then that helps me just isolate those items. And then I can actually come through, invert that mask, and now I'm good to go. Although I also have Control Shift tether to switch keyboards. So you might see a random keyboard thing pop up. But yeah, great question on that. So now I have this. Hello from Ghana, Ian. Hi, how you doing, Pappy? Welcome. Okay, great. Oh, cool. So there we go. Nunchucks are in the bag. So let's actually just save this real quick. And now we can come through here and maybe give it some color and maybe some materials, and then we can move on to the next one. So let's see here. So, let's get some color in here. So first things first, the chain itself. I'll do like a light gray for this. And let's just RGB. Let's actually just pop up this brush. And not brush, color. Let's just stamp this over here. Fill that sucker up there. Maybe we have a little bit of kind of semi-gold material. So let's just fill that. This would be a little bit more of a brown. Say something like that. So fill that object. And Yeah, that should be okay. Oh, you know what we didn't do? You know what we didn't do? I'm just noticing it right now. We need to also mirror and weld this guy right here. So let's go to geometry, delete that, come here to modify topology. So there's an empty space right in here. So mirror and weld. Not X. There we go. Something like that. Very cool. Easy enough. And for that, actually, let's make that a lighter color wood. Yeah, let's make that a lighter color wood. Maybe something like that. So let's come back up. Let's fill object. And then on the wraps themselves, let's actually get them kind of like a dirty white, like an off-white color. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, that'll be fine for now. We can choose our final colors when we head over to Substance at some point. Won't be today, but we can do that. Hello from Michigan. Hello, hello. You are absolutely welcome, Nate. This handle wrapping technique might be helpful for Mike Sherma's modeling of his bike handlebars. Woo! Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. You know what's funny was last week we covered how to make Leo's hand wraps, or how I approached Leo's hand wraps, rather. And then that got me thinking how I could do something that spiraled down. And that was actually the result that I came up with. And I thought that was really cool. So I'm glad you guys liked that one. How am I zooming like that? Great question. Shift M for magnifying glass. And that this will help you kind of zoom in and see. And what's cool is you can actually modify this. So if you come on up to preferences and you come on down to magnifying glass, there we go. So you have a magnifying glass, you have your radius, how big something is. I think that by default it's like 100, and I kicked that up to 200 just because I like it nice and big. And then from here, you actually have a fade. So it's designed to be, you know, like a magnifying glass, center focused, and things kind of fall off. Except for, I realize that sometimes when I'm streaming, that might be a little hard on the eyes for you to see. So I pump that fade all the way. And then you can control how much you zoom. I think by default it's set to like 1, but I found 2 to be really useful, especially for streaming. And then of course you can change the curvature, you can change the opacity, you can change the frame and the shadow work. All that's, I left that at default. And so it's just Shift M, and that turns that on and off. Especially too when you're like trying to see, you know, the little bubbles. Like, I'm sure you've all done this, or you go down to deformation and it's like, I need to click this little bubble right here. So that magnifying glass and the mouse, I just come over and be like, okay, I want to polish, but I want to use the bubble. So I find that helpful to also select the things like that X, Y, and Z that's so tiny up there in that button. So I'll do that sometimes. So yeah, Shift M. All right. So we got the basic of nunchucks down. We could spend time detailing it, but I actually would rather save this out, and then let's actually create, let's do Raphael's size. So let me get some reference on that real quick. I have an idea what they look like, but I want to see, I think it has a very similar wrap technique for the handle as well. So if I go Sai, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle, yeah, it's pretty fun design. Okay, and yeah, there is that wrap technique, and then a cap. This one's going to be really cool. I actually think this one's going to be really fun to build out. Okay. I'm going to go the more realistic approach, which is they're more round, not squared off. At least that's what I'm seeing. I know there might be some more squared off ones, but I think the round one might be more fun and look overall really cool. And I know Sais are definitely designed for like a one-piece construction so that it's all one piece, doesn't really come apart. And the one I'm looking at is really dope. So let's actually do that. So let's make sure that we save this. So let's come save up, nunchucks. So, you know, in fact, I'm going to just rename this all together and just call this nunchucks base mesh. This way I always have it and I can call back to it for other stuff. That'll be close enough. Again, all the like detail work, we'll leave that for another day. Nope, not load. Did not mean to do that. So let's do this. Let's actually, you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna put this right up here, hovering above Leo's head. There we go. And then we're gonna switch out. Yep, say switch. And let's go ahead and grab a traditional cylinder. And then from there, do I want to do cylinder actually? Yeah, well, let's do it. Should be fine. And maybe the same approach. Initialize. Maybe get this a little bit lower. Ooh. Okay. You're watching me think. I actually. I'm wondering if this edging would work for what I want to do. You know what? Let's try it. What's the worst that happens? We break it, right? So let's do this. Let's combine this, and then let's push this all the way up. Okay. So we'll call this the main blade. Because here's my thought. That rounds out pretty nicely. So let's come back up here. Mr. Henry, you're a lifesaver. And I'm going to come over here. Let's go polygroups, group by normals. I'm going to drag this out, say something like this. Perfect. Let's come over here, geometry, clean that up. Maybe I didn't really need to do that particular. That's a little low res. This might be too low. This might be too low, actually. I'm kind of changing my mind now. I'm very much changing my mind now. Let's redo this. Let's pull this back up. Let's go our base cylinder. Let's drag that out. Okay, we're clearing it. All right, go there. Perfect. We're in edit mode. Let's go initialize. Let's do 6. 6, I think, will be better. Yeah, 6 will be better. That's fine. And then let's go make Polymesh 3D. Just bring our Leo back. Leo, come back. Where you going, buddy? I don't know. They don't pay me to sing. Sorry. Here we go. So nunchucks, boom. And then let's go ahead and switch back to this guy. All right, here we go. Okay. Do it! Oh, yeah. That's how yours are made? Nice, nice, nice. I'm going to take my sweater off for a second. It's getting a little warm in here. Yeah. I had a thought with that 4 points, but I thought against it ultimately because I figured it's going to be hard. I mean, we could have stitched it together, but I'm going to try something. I want them to be more round. I don't want them to have any super sharp edging. I don't know. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. The fun part about creating anything is you can do it again and again, and if you don't like something, that's okay. So what we're going to do here is I'm first going to create the actual blade aspect itself. I'm going to kind of work backwards. So I'm going to do the blade itself. So I'm going to come in here, mask this section off, kind of come up and do a slight taper, something like this. There you go, yeah. And then with Henry's beautiful stuff, I'm going to come in here, I'm going to make polygroups, group by normals, come in here, turn that off. There we go. A little bit cleaner of a mesh. Actually, let's just come in here. Didn't mean to grab that color. I just wanted to turn on symmetry. There we go. Say something like this would be pretty cool. Maybe place that a little bit more there. Rebuild that. Why is that like that? Why are you the way that you are? Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Do I have anything? No. Interesting. Let's try that again. Gave me a little bit of a funky dunky bit. Oh, there we go. Okay. Probably just exceeded more than I wanted it to, which is totally fine. Come over here, do the same thing, drag this out, boom, done. Awesome. Actually, I didn't want to do that to that one yet. I'll show you why in a second. Now from here, what I want to do is actually just come over here, get some edge loop. Come come in there. Let's do insert, single edge loop, kind of make that a little bit bigger. There we go. Make that one piece. Okay. Now this will deform a lot nicer when we get to that point. So I'm pretty happy about that. Now let's work on the bottom aspect. We can always make things a little bit longer. So I'm going to come in here. You could do an auto temp, but because I did a temporary selection based on those groups, but because my poly groups are overall different, I don't need to worry about this so much. But sometimes in order to just get parts of your mesh built out quickly without always having to go through QMesh, the gizmo is your best friend here, because what I can do, so let's clear this up. Let's just do a mask reversal. So I'm going to control drag this out, then press Alt. That's going to inverse that mask. And now I'm going to just center that back to this world. I'm going to control drag this out. And now I'm going to flare this out. This is how I block stuff up so fast. Come in here and do something like this. Then I'm going to control drag again. I'm going to just bring this back down. So then I get this shape here. And then I'm going to control drag again and bring it down until I say something like this. Now, of course, we'll need to make some modifications based on the hands, which is also why we didn't spend so much time detailing the nunchucks. You kind of want just like an overall idea of what that's going to look like. Say maybe something like that. Okay, great. I can always make this a little bit longer at the top. Okay, now I have something like that, which is perfect. So now what we can do, we can come through here though, mirror and weld this so that we get the same poly groups on all the sides. And now I'm going to come in here on this side. I'm going to do a Alt tap, and now I'm going to QMesh this. I'm going to do symmetry, of course. So Control tap, bring this out. Say something like that. Now this one's going to be a little bit more squared, so it'll be important to add some edge loops here to kind of go through. So what we can do is we can actually hover over this edge, insert multi-edge loop, and actually, yeah, let's do a interactive elevation, because I'm going to want to flare this out a little bit, which will hopefully give me a little bit more roundness. But then this happens too. This flares out. So we can do that later if we want. Right now we want to kind of have like a good shape to it. I could have, yeah, absolutely. It's just what my brain thought of first. Yep, absolutely. I could also, this is too large. So yeah, we could just do inset, drag that in there, say something like that, and then come in and then QMesh that out. Again, like kind of like leaving the room for 5 seconds, right? I kind of try to just think of like, I don't want to be switching tools too often. So in my case, a lot of times I just ultimately will just sit there and think of like, what do I think is the best way to go about it? So it's all about just, yeah, your approach. It's your world. Okay, so now the fun part here is that there's a natural bend to this. And I've actually been thinking about how I wanted to approach this for a little bit now. So here's the thing. I'm actually going to drag this out. I'm going to turn on local symmetry here. And I'm going to scale this down. Say something like this. So yeah, so I've been kind of thinking about this for a little bit of time. And we're going to add some resolution here, because I'm trying to keep it all one piece, because I'm a madman. So let's come in and add some resolution to this. Okay. Let's see here. What brush did you use on the top of that blade to divide the section? Thanks. Hey, Art, not a problem. So I actually used a brush that was built by Henry Cervanka, and I actually have a link for you because he does actually provide that brush. It's worth every penny. So I like to preach any brush that I think is worth. I preach any brush that I think is worth it. So yeah, check that one out. But basically, it is called his. He personally called it, which is fun, his Mesh Fusion Retopo. And basically, all of these things here, he has all of these segments. He has all the way up to 100. Of course, skipping some of the more, well, actually, what is that? Yeah, he has 100. So he starts at 4. He doesn't start at 1. Starts at 4 and works this all the way up. It's a really cool way. And then again, the mesh fusion technique is super awesome. Hopefully that helps. Okay. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to see something real fast. Where are we at? Okay. Playing with an idea before I do another thing. Because I also... Okay, yeah, all right. I have an idea, and this isn't how I'm going to do it. Okay. Literally just said, let's not do that. Okay, what we're going to do, we're going to change position here because I don't want to do it that way. I don't want to do it that way. The way I'm going to do it is not good. So let's repurpose this here. Oh, I wanted to rename, not group. Okay, good job, Ian. All right, so let's do this. Let's just insert another cylinder. Nothing too crazy. Yeah, perfect. Okay. I'm going to scale this up. I'm going to come on down. I'm going to rotate this around. I'm going to come over here. I'm going to work off over here on this side of the world. I think this will ultimately work better anyway. But see, this is what I love about ZBrush. I just get to play, and it works. Okay, here we go. So we're going to do this. I'm going to mask this section off here and reverse that, tip that over. There we go. And let's do the same thing. Let's come over here with Henry's brush. Okay, this is 6-sided. So let's come in here. Let's just do, say that. And then let's make sure smooth isn't turned on. Make sure our polygroups are good. So let's go polygroups, group by normals. Drag this out. Make sure that our mesh is looking pretty decent. Boom, boom, boom. I'm just gonna go, I have solo turned on. I don't want that. There we go. Do the same thing. Drag that out. I didn't mean to do that. Let's just come over here. When solo's turned on, you can't see when you drag out your IMM until you get it, and then you got to resize it. I don't want to do that. I want to do that. There we go. I'm just coming here real fast. Delete that edge. And delete that edge. I guess that wouldn't have mattered, actually, that internal one. I'm just going to go ahead and ultimately flip it. I didn't need to go about doing all of that. Just that first one's going to make sense. So insert, and then let's get this going. I want some good resolution. Okay, now we're going to do the proper bend. Oh, actually, let's scale this down. There we go. Okay. My brain is moving 1,000 miles an hour. All right, let's do that. Let's see. Did I miss anything? Cowabunga dude. Yeah, absolutely. What's up, Andre? How you doing, man? All right. Okay, here we go. So now the proper way to do it. Let's come in here, and we're going to go back to bend curve. There we go. So now the fun part is we get to really just kind of move these things around, right? So I don't want local sim turned on. No symmetry. Let's turn on 1 second. Where are we at? Symmetrical off. It's that green cone. There we go. Nice. Okay, so now let's just drop the resolution down just a little bit. So we're going to move this up. Say something like this. I'm going to kind of move this around. I'm going to increase the resolution. And we're going to play with this. If I hit D for, dynamic subdivision, this will give me a better idea of how the thing will look. So let's actually move this way. And I can always correct anything I think is too much. Just getting a decent flare out. So I'm actually getting some pinching here. So I can do one of two things. Let's actually do this. I'm gonna reset this. And then let's back this up actually, because I'm being lazy. And let's actually just redo this with less edge loops. You can always add more, that's fine. Come through, set this in the center. Come in, bend curve. Again, symmetry is turned off, perfect. Let's drop that resolution down. There we go, that's a little bit better. Okay. All right, there we go. This will be a lot easier to deal with. We can get this transition a little bit easier, a little bit cleaner. There we go. That works. Let's take a step back. Let's take a look at that shape. Shape is actually quite nice. So we can actually just bring in just a little bit more resolution. Yeah, say something like that. Let's flare that out just a little bit. Maybe bring this down, bring this over. Yeah, we'll have it kind of flare just a little bit downwards. That's kind of cool. I kind of like how that's moving. I can push this up like this. There we go. Say something like that. Let's go ahead and accept that change. So when I smooth that down, that gives me this. Now I do have a little bit of pinching here, right? So I want to prevent that. So I'm going to come in here and I can add a single edge loop right in here. And then let's actually grab our mask lasso. Set this in the center here. I'm going to rotate this just a bit. I'm going to kind of flare this out just a little bit. Kind of move that, say something like that. There we go. And then these areas here, we can actually reset this and kind of scale this down. It's a little bit more uniform. Invert that, maybe soften that mask a little bit, maybe bring that in. So we're getting something a little bit more like that. I think that can work. Yeah, you could absolutely, yeah. Very much so. I know, it was especially well, what we showed at the summit. If you guys remember what we showed at the summit, I can't wait to play with those more. All right, all right, all right. Okay, so now we're going to come through here. I'm actually going to pick all the wrong colors, apparently. I was just trying to turn off symmetry, man. And then let's actually do kind of a scale inflate down. There we go. All right, now let's give it some resolution here, because right now the resolution is quite bananas. So I'm gonna come in here. I'm gonna grab this guy right here. Just make this all the same. So this is the bottom cap here. I do want some clean topology for this. So again, this is becoming one of my favorite brushes. Let's go ahead and hit this. Let's grab this guy. Can I make this a different? No, let's drag that out. I'm being too nitpicky, I understand that. Let's come over here. Let's make sure that when you divide, smooth is turned off. There we go. I find myself sometimes being a little too nitpicky with when I want to do a very specific thing that I'm like, it ultimately is not going to matter. So if you're like me, then try to breathe. It's going to be good. All right. So now we have this guy right here. Let's give us some resolution. So I want to come through here and let's just grab that guy right there. And then on this edge, we're going to come in and grab this right here. So now if I hit D, gives me that more rounded effect. Now what I want to do with this actually is I actually want this to kind of come to a point a bit. So, or at least some sort of point. So I'm actually going to grab these 2 points, and I'm just going to go ahead and Q mesh this, but I'm going to press and hold Shift for this to drag that point a little bit more forward. And then I'm going to come in here, interactive elevation, kind of come in like that. So that gives me a little bit more of that classic tip that you would come to expect. And then again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of mask this section off, maybe do a little bit of a light invert, and just kind of do, maybe come in here and just do a slight modification taper. Yeah, there we go. That's cool. That way it's not flat. Just gives me that control. And see, what's cool about that is now I can do that with this guy right here, right? So I can come in here. Let's actually delete this internal one. Let's get this guy right here. Again, Q mesh coming in, pressing and holding Shift, kind of tapers that up a little bit. And then coming through, give me these something like that. There we go. Now I have something like that. So it just gives me just a little bit more control with that function. Actually, let's actually come through here. Let's mask that off. There we go. I'm gonna do deflate, shrink that. There we go. Yeah, there we go. Like it. I like it. Tap that. There we go. Looks a little bit more like a point. And then we can mirror and weld that on the x-axis without having that piece there. Cool. I'm happy with that. And if we want to, we can bring those in just a little bit closer. Just do another mirror and weld. Now that became one piece of geometry. Before, it was just single-sided. But because we crossed over, we mirror and weld, that now is one piece. Now this is one piece. It's a lot easier to work with. And so now we have the 2 pieces of the psi. So yeah, let's hit save. Oh, so yeah, psi. Yeah, so we'll call this psi base mesh. Perfect. Yeah, the newly updated anchors are going to be sweet. I know, Anthony. It's going to be so awesome. Love watching you work. It's a pity you don't have more people around instead of the super channel. Thanks, man. I really appreciate that. Yeah. Well, that, you know, I love what I do. And for me personally, it's like if one person was watching or if a million people are watching, I just love being able to showcase what I can and spread the knowledge as much as I can. So, dude, thank you for the kind words. Seriously, if there's anybody new here, just please hit that like, subscribe, all that good stuff. I do this every Wednesday for the most part, and I have so much fun doing it. It's a lot of fun. So thanks, man. I really appreciate that. All right, here's what we're going to do now is that we're going to give us a little bit of a flare on this piece. So I'm actually going to come through here. Let's turn this off, and let's actually come in this section. So here I'm actually going to just mask this section off, set this in the center, and then I'm just going to push this out. So then that kind of flares a bit. I'm going to invert, and I'm going to push this in a little bit. So this kind of now has a little bit more of a taper to it. Say something like that. There we go. Now, depending on what your goals are, if you really want this to be a single solid piece, we could end up doing that. But for the blockout purpose and to save myself a little bit of headache, I'm not going to do that right now. Doesn't mean you can't. It's just ultimately right now, I'm going to keep them the 2 pieces because I think it's going to ultimately benefit having these separate. And I can always add in like some wrapping and stuff. Like a little cross hatch and then the wrapping if I choose to. So that could be a lot of fun. What I am going to do here though is I'm going to kind of come up in this section and make this go above and make this go below. like that. And then I'm going to insert some topology here. In fact, actually, yeah, let's do this. Yeah, that should be fine. There we go. That looks a little bit more, that's a little bit nicer. You can always add a few more. Yeah, that bows out a little bit more. I like that. And then from here, let's just add some edges in this area. Let's maybe add like an edge here and an edge here. So this becomes like a sharper fall off, like that. Maybe that's where the initial wraps end. We'll play. And then let's do the same thing down here. We're gonna create a cap, much like what we did earlier, but I still want to have this edge loop here to kind of support that. There we go. Oh, thank you, Bill. Dude, thank you so much. Much appreciate that. All right. So now, what are we at? We're at 1138. Okay, great. So now what we can do is, if we want the same exact wrap, this is what's fun about ZBrush. let's just steal it. Let's steal what we got. So let's come in here and let's actually grab, where do we put our full nunchuck? There it is, right there. All right, great. So actually, let me do this. I'm gonna copy this tool in particular. I'm gonna paste this tool in. So this looks like that. Let's grab this in here. This is just a merged version of what we were going for, right? But here, you know what? We can just take this part right here. Let's grab that, Control-Shift-A. Yeah, perfect. Let's go ahead and modify topology and delete hidden. Awesome. And now that we have these stamped over here, I could just like grab a color from that one if I choose to. But wrap file size look to be more of a black wrapping, which is perfect. So I'm gonna grab this one, gonna inverse that. We're gonna split hidden. All right, so let's call this that white wrapping right there. Let's go to color. Let's go to fill that object. Beautiful. And then here on this wrap, we're gonna come in, let's do the same thing. And let's go ahead and add some thickness. Make it thick. There we go. Beautiful. Okay, let's also grab this guy right there. And let's split that cap. So let's call this the cap. There we go. Awesome. So we'll keep things a little bit more identical to each other. And now let's actually grab all of this. We're just going to grab this and we're going to shove this up here to the top. And we could do something like that if we would like, but we are going to need to do like, we're going to need to close this off a little bit. And I think we can do this. We could do this in a fun way. We could do this in kind of more of a brute force way. So let's actually kind of grab this as a darker color. Let's go ahead and fill that in. RGB, fill it. Guess this, well, we don't need it too. It's showing black, but I don't want it to be too dark. So let's actually kind of give this more of a silver look. Let's go fill that object, and we'll fill that object as well. There we go. Okay. And this cap actually on his looks to be a little bit longer. So we're gonna grab this guy and we're going to come in here and we're gonna grab this very top piece right here. So let's grab this. There, just like that, perfect. Just invert that, just using the gizmo to make that a bit longer. So we're just gonna modify this to fit our needs. In fact, let's delete this one and these, and let's do that. Keeps that a little bit even. Same thing with the internal architecture. There you go. Looks pretty good. I like it. It's close enough. Scale this up. Now, if we want to change the wrap shape itself, maybe this is a little bit too long. We could absolutely do that. I'm actually thinking of not doing that, actually. So I'm going to retract what I just said. We could do a thing, but I'm not going to do it. There we go. That's the answer. Okay, so let's go. Let's grab the Move Topological brush. Now, here's the fun part. So I'm scaled. I'm maxed out. And I get this question a lot too, so actually it's cool we ran across this. I have this shape here, and I'm maxed out at 1,000 draw size, and I want to go bigger with my brush, and I can't go bigger with my brush right now. It's capped out here, and that's no fun. So how can I go bigger with my brush if I don't want to change the scene of my actual, you know, the size of my scene? Although it's probably wise that I do that. So, but what I could do is come up here to Preferences, and I could come up here to Draw, and now here is our cap. So I can kick this up to, I think 5,000 is the max, right? So now I can come through here, and now look how much bigger my brush can be. So I could absolutely do this and get a much bigger brush if I would like. However, I take this capped out as like an indication that my object is too big for the scene. Like this is a massive object. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to scale things down. Now, when you're using Dynamesh, this might affect you a little bit, but now look how much bigger my brush is naturally just because I scaled that scene down. So just something to kind of keep in mind. You don't have to do it that way if you don't want to, but when your scene is like really, really massive, then this could cause a little bit of conflict. So being able to come in here and just kind of scale it all up or down might make it a little bit easier overall. So just being able to do that would benefit as well. So just kind of food for thought. I'm gonna reset this in here, make that a little bit smaller. Okay, so what we can do now is I actually want to end up just ultimately tucking this in. And so what's cool about how a lot of wraps will end is they'll just kind of wrap into each other, you know? So we could do the same thing. We can kind of come in here. It's more of a fake it till we make it anyway. So we could just kind of come in here and make this have a nice little bit of a tuck-in period. And then we can do the exact same thing. Oh, we got some interesting topology happening here. Okay, cool. Is this, what did we do, Ian? What did we do? Let's figure this out. So let's come over here to, let's come on up over to polygroups, auto groups. Aha, okay, cool. Just got a secondary mesh in there that didn't want to treat us very nicely, which means we probably have that in our other wrap as well. So we're gonna delete hidden on that. We're gonna tuck this back in. We're gonna come in here and move this around. Okay. There, something like that. All right, that should be pretty good. Come in here, tap, tap. Let's scale this up. All right, let's go ahead and hit save. Oh, there you go. Yeah, that's a really cool one, Alpha Omega. Yeah, using the deformation as well and just scaling down. Absolutely. I love that. Yeah, no, that's absolutely correct. You can absolutely do that. It's a great way to do it. But whatchamacallit? If you want to do multiple at the same time, then the pizza box is kind of a good method for that. Or you could do like a transpose master as well. But no, that's a great way, especially if you're going for precision and you want. So yeah, agree with you. Hey, what's up, Mr. White? It's live. This is live. Is it Yurkin? YRKN? Yeah, this is live. I'm only going to be live for a few more minutes. So I usually go from 10 to noon Pacific Standard Time every Wednesday, and it usually ends up just being a massive Q&A session, which is always fun. I personally love that. Okay, we're gonna do real quick is we're going to come in here, and I'm just now wanting to kind of shrink this down a little bit, make this come up to a little bit more of a point. It's a little too big. Here we go. Yes, there we go. That looks cool. I love it. And then let's see. Do I want to do a wrap like X here? There's not one on his. Actually, there's not one on his, so that I may not end up doing that. But they are a little bit skinnier in that section. And then, you know what, let's go over if we wanted to weld this as one piece. Let's do that, because that actually, I think that's where I'm gonna go with that. I think we're just gonna treat this as this kind of wrap, especially since we're running out of time. So let's do this. So yeah, okay, digging it. Let's make this one piece. So what I'm gonna do is we're gonna save it first. Always come up and save your work. So I'm gonna hit save. That's great. Let's come on up here and actually rename something. So we're gonna go strap wrap. Then we got cap, and then we have leather wrap. Leather wrap, which is perfect. Okay, we're gonna move this side part up to the top. And then we got this one. Now we're gonna go to V2 and we're just gonna focus on these two parts for the rest of the stream. So we're gonna come in and let's do this. So first I wanna cover real fast the why I'm gonna do what I'm gonna do. And right now let's focus on the vertices. So here you'll notice that this is really low res. Like this is only 138 active points for this portion. And this one is only 378 active points. So this is quite low, both these pieces. So if I were to try to stitch these together, what will ultimately happen is that there might be points that ZBrush has to make up. And if they have to make that up, then you might not get the results that you want. I also love the way this falls off. So I want to preserve the shape of this as much as possible. So I'm going to subdivide first, make sure smooth is on, and apply the dynamic subdiv, which will give me a lot better results. And I'm going to delete lower. So now I have way more topology supporting the actual mesh that I want. And I can also from here come in, let's say with like the infinite move brush, and then come in and, you know, maybe make a change or something like that. Like maybe I want this to be a little bit more flared out. This angle's not quite what I want. So, right, so I can flare this out a little bit more and get that shape supported exactly how I want it. Come in here too. Again, if dynamic is on, I'll just apply it, and I'm gonna delete lower. So now when I merge these two items together, so I'm gonna come up here, merge down, you can see now that there are way more active points that I could use to do the stitching. Again, if it was super low res, then ZBrush might have to make up some points. You might get a lot of triangles, and you might get a lot of information that's unwanted. If we want this to be all one piece and have some really good topology, then this is what we can do. So in this case, if you want to merge things together, I would start here first. Once I have this, I'm going to go ahead and do a control tap on my history and make sure that the history is exactly the way I want it. I'm going to call back to this at some point. And now we're going to come in here and we're going to go here. We're going to click on our remesh by union. And now the stitching down here is what we're looking at. Now I'm going to want to clean the stitching up a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and say accept this. Have my symmetry turned back on. I'm going to turn on the smooth brush. And what I'm going to do actually is knock down the smooth to 0. We don't need RGB, but I'm going to turn on sculptress. Now I'm going to pick a small brush size, and I'm going to start smoothing in this area. Now the reason why I turned smooth off, like as in I didn't just go Z add off, I went Z intensity down to 0, is because I actually want to rebuild the topology by tessellating and decimating, which is what Sculptress is doing all at the same time. so I can come through here and get more topology in this area. And I'm being a little bit overly cautious here by like putting a lot of topology here on these edges. But as it gets closer, hopefully this will give me a lot better of a result that I'm looking for. And that's going to be good. Okay. So now I have this, right? Now what we're going to do, I'm going to go ahead and make everything one polygroup. And then I'm going to use the slice curve. So slice curve. And I'm going to slice in this area here. Now, what you could do as well, if you don't want to use the slice curve, we have some pretty clean mesh. I can actually come in here. I had symmetry turned off for some reason. And come in here and grab this, make this one piece, you know, make that one thing, and come in here, maybe make this another polygroup. Just want different topology here. There we go. Perfect. So now I have contrasting polygroups for this. So now here, I'm just going to hit Save Next. Okay. And then now what I'm going to do, we're going to come up here. Now we want to pay attention to the 90,000 polys that we have. Or I'm sorry, 90,000 active points that we have. And so now what I can do is we can utilize some cool features. We can go over here to ZBrush and we can come in here. Let's do key groups down to 0. Let's do adaptive size down to 0 because I don't want the quads to get big and small too drastically. I want some even topology. And then from here, we're going from 90,000, so 5,000 might be pretty good. So we'll go ahead and say ZBrush, and we're going to make sure that, again, our symmetries turn on. What we could do also to save ourselves a favor is we can actually come up here and come up to transform and turn on the Z symmetry as well. So that this way it's going to look on the X side and it's going to look on the depth side. So then we might get some really nice quads and preserve this look here. So we're going to go ahead and back this up for a second and let's ZBrush that. All right, very cool. That actually looks quite nice. We're going to go half that size, ZBrush that again. Encountered an error. Why did you encounter an error? So let's go 5. Let's go 4. Okay, let's back up. Not sure why I encountered an error. So it's encountering an error. So we're going to do close holes. We're going to weld our points. There might be something I'm missing there. That's okay. So let's come back in. And actually, we can go mesh integrity. Let's check it. There are some edges that are causing conflict, so let's fix that. So anytime you have an error where something's not going exactly as you want, mesh integrity will save the day. And then let's go back to ZBrush. Let's try this again. And let's see here. This is fun for sure. Going to be added to my weekly ZBrush watch. Yay, that's awesome. Would it be a good idea to get the hand in there to scale it for the turtle? Yes, it absolutely would be a good idea. Absolutely. Okay, cool. So we're actually, ZBrush is quite nicely yelling at us, which is always so much fun. So let's come in here and let's add some more topology a few more times. Let's see if that helps anything at all. So I'm getting some nasty holes, which is always so good. Okay, so in this case, I'm getting some interesting results, and I'm not quite sure where to go from here. So if I go ahead and divide a little bit, and just delete lower, let's say something like that. It could just be the fact that ZBrush is just not able to take the information I'm throwing at it and might be too small for it. So a lot of times I've seen people like go to Dynamesh right away. I try to go to subdividing first and fix my mesh. There could be just some interesting errors I'm not quite noticing. And what we could also do too, there might be floating topology. So let's come here to polygroups, auto groups, and let's see if there's anything in the background. And there absolutely is. So that's our problem. So here we go. Here is all the nastiness. So all I did was went to auto groups and picked this mesh, and now here's all this nastiness. And this is going to be throwing ZBrush for our loop. So we don't want that. So let's come in here, geometry, delete hidden. Perfect. Again, let's come on up and let's now use, let's use slice curve real quick. Let's do slice curve here. Slice curve here. Okay, slice curve here. And we're going to go and mirror and weld this so that we have that. Let's give this another go. And we already saved, so now we made some changes to our mesh. Let's go ahead and save this. So those are some common errors you might run into that, you know, even I run into from time to time. If you find that something like this, you know, maybe what we could do is come in here too and do a light smooth and rebuild some of this topology. Because this might just be causing some weird funky-dunky-ness that we don't want. And again, let's come back up over here. Let's go to geometry. Let's close holes. Let's weld those points. Let's clean that mesh up. All right. I think that might, hopefully, that might save us the day. So let's find out. So ZBrush, let's go ahead. Let's start with 5. Maybe let's start with 10. Let's give it a little bit of love. And let's go again. Okay, there we go. That's a lot better. That's a lot better. Does ZBrush have does symmetry have an influence on ZBrush? Yeah, what's going on is that essentially what's happening is that ZBrush is trying to look at one side and make sure that the side is actually super clean and that it works really, really well. And then after it establishes that, after it establishes which side is correct, it then is trying to then come on and actually, make that adjustment. It's trying to make that happen. So it's focused on one side, and then it's going to go ahead and try to populate on the other side and keep it as even as possible. So in this case, yeah, it's going to affect. If I were to turn symmetry off, then it's going to try to do the whole thing all in one shot, and it doesn't really matter. Whatever ZBrush thinks is the best edge flow, that's what's going to happen. Okay, so let's actually go half here, and let's do this again. There we go. So now my error went away. So now my mesh is a lot cleaner. Now, we don't want this too low. I see here that, like, we only have 17,000 active points. That's actually not a lot. So here we go. Okay. That welded quite nicely. Topology looks good. I'm happy with that. There's not too many crazy poles. Things seem to be wrapping around quite nicely. We could try to go half one more time. And since I had so many errors in trying to actually clean the mesh up a little bit, I'm actually not going to project history. So I'm just going to get rid of that marker because there's no need to do that. I am going to see if I can go a little bit lower. There we go. That looks a lot nicer. And that is really, really good. I'm liking that a lot. And if I hit, perfect. All right. So let's save that. Yeah, that looks really nice. I like that. And let's look at the top. The edges look really nice. Yep, topology is really good. So there you go. Okay, perfect. I can live with that, which is nice. Let's go back to V1. And let's turn the color back on. And we can actually fill that with a color. Perfect. All right. What's up, Chris? So I have nunchucks I've made now. Now I'm making a sai. So, yep. And actually, that's going to wrap up the stream. So we actually made 2 items today, which makes up for last week's, because last week I didn't make anything, but I also loved all the questions you guys brought. So I was so happy answering questions that we just turned into a massive Q&A, which I always love. So thank you guys for coming in and having such great questions and having interest in how we operate ZBrush on a daily basis. Is so awesome. Let's see here. I want to make sure before I leave that I answer all questions. Yes, absolutely. Again, I would definitely start sizing this. We have the initial design itself down, so we wouldn't really need too much, but here's the cool part is that, I have this relatively close enough. You know what I mean? Like, this turtle being here, I can scale this down a little bit and it's going to feel a little bit more natural. But yeah, get it into the character's hand as much as possible and make all final adjustments. Don't just rush it to finish. So absolutely agree that you're going to want to size it to the thing. Let's see here. That's what it looks like in metal. It's dope. It's dope. Okay. Let's see here. And you have just in time for the end, but thanks for showing up, Chris. I appreciate that. Will you be doing a Halloween sculpt or a Christmas sculpt? Says Frank Sculpts. So I did a venomized jack-o'-lantern already, which is really, really cool. Let's see if I can pull it up for you guys real quickly. So if I were to go to, actually here, let me make sure real fast. I am actually planning on maybe doing like, okay. Let me see if I can just find it real quick. I am planning on doing something in my Discord where we do like ornaments or something. More information to come on that for sure. Let me see. Let me see if I can find it. There it is. Yeah. So I did this thing, which is really cool. So this was a venomized pumpkin. It's not letting me click on it. I wish it would let me click on it. I don't want to log in right now, but it's really, really cool. So my Instagram, IR_sculpts, definitely go check that out if you want to see that one. And there is an STL for that too. So you can find that link in my Discord, or actually you could find it, I think, on that as well, if you want to download it. Cool. All right, everyone. Thank you guys so much. I'm so glad. It's been awesome. I've had a great time coming through this. Again, we made nunchucks in the stream. We made sais in the stream. So if you want to make your own Ninja Turtle weapons, then go right ahead and do it. Or if you just want to, make your own nunchucks and sais from this, go right ahead. This was a cool approach. Yeah, and actually thinking about the new features coming soon, then I would actually use the Inker Brush's new feature to not having to mask that off so much. So that's a great approach. We'll play with that for sure. All right, everybody. Thank you guys so much, and I'll catch you next Wednesday. And if you're at Lightbox, I believe the booth is 1121. Come by, because I'm going to be there, as well as I think Paul Gabriel's going to be there. And then we're also going to have a ton of artists showing up and hanging out. So if you want to come in and say hi to those artists, I think we got Steve Teeps, we have Steven Anderson, we have Shane Olsen, we have Hammy Miami, who is the Sculpt-Off winner, and also the mini Sculpt-Off winner of this year's summit. We have Geo, who's coming. We have so many people coming that it will be great. So if you want to see how they are and you're in the Pasadena area, come over to Lightbox, say hi. We're going to be there all 3 days. It's going to be a blast. So, all right, that is it. And I will catch you guys later. Peace. Bye.